I can't keep this sidewalk clean for the life of me. I have swept this thing like 25 times this winter. And every time I sweep it off, it snows again. Oh, look at a bunch of deer in the backyard. There has to be a whole herd of them back there. They just took off through the pines, heading towards the back of the pond. Not uncommon around here at all. But the weather here has been so crappy. Yesterday, rain, snow, rain, snow, rain, snow all day. The foot of snow that we had has shrunk considerably. But thank goodness it's not extremely icy. This is weird. Look at this. The frost has heaved up the soil and left my walkway stones kind of sunken down into the ground. Makes walking down to the garage a little treacherous. Speaking of treacherous, my driveway, being that it's compacted, not plowed, but and with the rains and stuff yesterday, it became very, very slippery and icy. And I didn't want to walk down to the mailbox, so I drove down, and then I backed up to the house. Well, I'm backing up here, and right about here, I goosed it, and I don't know if you can see the tracks there where my back end slid over and almost went all the way into the ditch. Thankfully, four-wheel drive popped in, and I was able to come right out. But I've been even having to use my four-wheel drive to get out of the end of the driveway here, because when I stop and wait for traffic, it's so slippery that when I give it the gas, the back end just wants to spin. And I have a hard time getting out of my own driveway. But anyway, the weather being really nasty yesterday, you know, rain, snow, I didn't want to spend a lot of time. I couldn't spend any time outside. Earlier in the week, I was able to go out and cut some firewood, but not yesterday. So I'm stuck in the house, and when I'm stuck in the house by myself, I have plenty of time to reminisce, to, think. And strangely enough, I don't think about the good times. I tend to think more about the regrets in my life, about things that happened that I think, was there some way I could have done something different? And even at that, when I think about it, I think, well, no matter what path I chose, I think regardless, my life would have taken a different turn, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't have been without trials and tribulations, because I think no matter what path we took, you're still going to run into problems one way or another. It would just be a whole different path, a whole different struggle in life. It just so happened that the path that I took brought me to where I am today, and it is what it is. But I was remembering back to my first real girlfriend. We were attending the Baptist church, little Baptist church out in the middle of rural Ohio. And my mom and dad were very involved in the church, so we were required as kids to be part of that too. And in the summertime, they had the vacation Bible school, which we were required to attend. So it was like a week-long thing of going to church every day. And it was fun. I mean, it was kind of a social time with a bunch of other kids. And kids that didn't normally go to church would come to vacation Bible school, because there was a lot of fun things going on there, activities and arts and crafts and food and ice cream and it was just a fun time for kids. Well, that's where I met my first girlfriend. She was an attractive, cute, slim, trim girl, my kind of a woman, and I was attracted to her right away. And I don't ever remember how we were introduced or how we met, but we quickly, got to like each other. and we started dating at that point. I can't even remember my first date, where I took her, maybe to the movies or something like that. But it wasn't long after I started dating her, she asked me to go to her high school prom, which was in Brooklyn, Ohio. Now, Brooklyn is kind of a heavily residential area, a suburb of Cleveland, kind of on the southwest side of Cleveland, and that's where she lived. So I went to the prom with her. It was unfortunate for me, though, because I didn't know anybody at this school, not a soul except for her. And when we got there, she kind of saddled up with her gaggle of girlfriends and left me sitting at a table by myself. So it was a very uncomfortable situation for me that evening, but I lived through it regardless. And I think she enjoyed herself just being there, and being that she had a boyfriend with her, even though she didn't spend a lot of time with me. She was more interested in spending time with her girlfriends and chit-chatting. She was a talker, though. She was a real yacker. She liked to talk. And the thing I learned about her very quickly was that she was very loud and obnoxious. And then she had one of those worse than Kamala Harris laughs. And it just really kind of began to gnaw at me after a while. I mean, if I took her to the movies and there was any kind of a graphic scene or anything, she was so loud, like, oh my gosh, and make a great big scene in the whole theater. And it was like, shh, be quiet, quiet down, don't be so loud. If there was a comical scene on the movie, she would laugh so loud and hideously. It would be like, oh my gosh, just calm down a little bit, you know? You're making a scene here. And I would be somewhat humiliated, you know, thinking, I embarrassed for her. But it was just something I lived with. Although I didn't really like it, I lived with it. I had no choice, you know. She was loyal. She was a good girlfriend, and we got along together. We had fun together regardless. She had a very strict curfew, so we always made sure that there was time before I had to take her home where we could park somewhere. You know, the high school teenager parking, necking, making out. I would say heavy petting, you know, and I never went any further than that. I mean, I was pretty reserved when it came to that. My parents always taught me the last thing you ever want to do is get a girl pregnant. So I was very, I heeded those words very strongly, and I didn't want to put myself in a situation. So it was just mostly kissing and making out, and I was fine with that. It was something I always looked forward to at the end of every date. And she was pretty much on board with it too, and it went along pretty well. The strange thing about dating her, though, like if I went over to her house, her mother was right there, part of that date that night. You know, she was sitting right there with us the whole time, and didn't give us any time to ourselves at all, which I thought was really weird, but you know, it was just something you had to deal with. If I ever went over to her house, her mom was right there in the middle of it, almost living vicariously through her daughter on a date night. Really strange, but anyway, one night I went to take her home, and we stopped along the street and found a parking spot, and we necked for a little while and got a little carried away. And when it came time to bring her back home, we were like 5 minutes past her curfew. She knew that she was 5 minutes late, and she seemed a little, you know, disturbed about that, but I walked her up to the door, and when I got to the door, her stepdad was there. He was not happy. He was actually extremely irate. very angry, and he grabbed her and just started beating her and cussing her and carrying on. I had never met the stepdad before, and he paid no heed that I was standing there. He just went about beating her and yanked her into the house and slammed the door. And I was extremely disturbed over that. I was scared to death. I went back to my car and took off and headed home, but boy, that really disturbed me. I felt really awful about that. And she didn't want to talk about it. She just acted like, it's no big deal, I was late, and my dad wasn't happy about it. And I thought, yeah, but it was way more than that, though, wasn't it? I mean, it just seemed like really scary to me. Regardless, it is what it was, and just kind of let it go. I just made sure that from that day on, I always got her home on time. Well, it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was invited over to her house. I asked my dad if I could borrow the car. He had this big Pontiac Catalina, one of those big four-door boats, the family car. And I borrowed the car, and I drove over to visit her at her house. And when I got there, I was met at the door by her mother. And her mother said, "Come on in. I want you to have a seat at the kitchen table." And when I walked in the kitchen, Grandma was sitting at the table already, and I sat down across from Grandma, and the mother sat across from me next to the Grandma. My girlfriend was kind of standing off to the side towards the hallway, and she seemed to be very nervous and disturbed, but I didn't know what was going on. I was kind of confused, like, what's this all about? What kind of surprise is this? Well, the mother and the grandmother immediately went into lambasting me and accusing me of being some kind of a degenerate pervert, that I was trying to grope her daughter's breasts. And, well, yeah, guilty as charged, but I mean, it was kind of one of those things where if she told me to stop, I stopped. And, I didn't pursue it. And at that time, when we were in the middle of necking or whatever we were doing, I never had her push my hand away or anything. And it just seemed like something that we did that was, kind of accepted by the both of us. And the whole fact that her mother found out about this really had me confused. Like, what's going on here? Like, did her mother interrogate my girlfriend to the point where my girlfriend exposed information that was personal? I was just like beside myself. I sat there and I never spoke a word. I just let them talk, and they were just humiliating me. The daughter was crying over, off to the side and pleading with her mother, "Please stop, don't do this to me, please stop." The mother refused to stop, though, and continued to lambaste me. At which point I had gotten to a point where I couldn't take anymore. I just stood up and walked out the door. My girlfriend chased me out the door, begging with me to come back, pleading with me. And I just told her, I said, it's pretty much over. I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore. It's just too much for me. I mean, I thought that you and I had something going on, but apparently you had to confide in your mother something that was personal between us, and I'm not trying to hide anything, but this is just too wacky for me. And so I went home. I drove home. My dad was working out in the yard, and I went over and I handed my dad the keys, and he said, "Boy, you're back home early. What? I thought you were going to hang out with your girlfriend today." And I said, "Well, Dad, here's what happened." Told my dad the story. And my dad said, "Well, son, I don't think you did anything that any other hot-blooded boy would have done. I did the same thing when I was a teenager. And, if she didn't like it, she would push you away and tell you no. And I'm sure you would have responded to that. I'm not the kind of guy that would force myself on a woman or ever try to do anything like that. And, he agreed that the mother was overpowering in the relationship and had really no place to do what she did. And he agreed that it was probably best if I walked away from that situation, which I did, sadly. That girlfriend continued to stalk me for over a year. She would show up at the house pleading and begging with me to take her back, and I couldn't do it. I just remembered everything that happened, and it was just too much for me, and I said, no, I'm sorry. I love you and everything, but I'm just done. I'm done. I'm moving on. I'm going to find some greener pastures. I'm not dealing with this anymore. So yeah, that was the end of that story. And I don't know whatever happened to her. I imagine she remarried somebody at one point or another. But I still have fond memories of her. I think she was a nice girl. I feel bad for her. I know, when I think of it, I think there had to be some kind of abuse going on in that home with the stepdad. Why would the mother be so overly protective of her daughter to that degree, which was just over the top wacky? And then why was I never introduced to the father in the years that I dated the girl? Why did I never meet him? Why did I never know him? I just found that kind of bizarre too. Well, like I said, I reminisce on these things and I think, what would have happened if I would have done things differently? I mean, there's a possibility she could have ended up being my wife at one point or another, but that never happened as a result of the situation. So yeah, when you think about the paths that you've taken in life, the stories, what could have happened, the decisions that you made, I'm not sure that I would have made life any better. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's kind of where my head was this morning, just kind of reminiscing, and I don't know if I would say regrets, but just wondering what life would have been had things been a little different. Well, thank you guys for watching the video today. I hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and continue to join me on this adventure. I got some people to meet today, some things to do, and that's kind of where I'm heading right now. So, been really, really busy, which I am very happy with, because I like being occupied all the time. It keeps my mind off of thinking of these things, and reminiscing about some of these things that weren't always all that pleasant, and wondering, how else things could have happened. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. I wish you all well. I keep you in my prayers, and until next time, cats, hopefully we make it through this winter. I survive this winter somehow. I'm looking forward to spring. Is it anywhere on the horizon? I don't see it yet. Till next time, cats, I'll catch y'all later.